Hey everyone, Adam here, So Was Your Podcast. I have a movie review for you today. I got an advanced screening of Death Drop Gorgeous, which is actually out right now in limited theatrical run, virtual theaters, and VOD. I'm not entirely clear what the difference between virtual theaters and VOD is, but you can now see this movie, so check it out on VOD. It's on all the major platforms, or if you're in LA, or I believe Colorado was their other market, it is in theaters. I'd be surprised if it didn't get expanded to at least New York City, possibly Boston. Not really sure, but check it out. Death Drop Gorgeous follows a kind of down on his luck, dejected bartender and a drag queen who's aging out of the drag world as they navigate not only a really insane, eccentric subculture nightlife, but also a very corrupt city, and there's a slasher on the loose. So this takes this really specific, interesting subculture of drag queens and the LGBTQ plus community. I'm sorry if I didn't get that acronym wrong. I'm not trying to leave anybody out. In Providence, and this is very much a Providence project. The people who made the movie are all transplants to Providence. They now call it home. They love the place. I actually did an interview with three of the creators of Death Drop Gorgeous. You can also find that on our channel. Really cool guys. It was a really interesting conversation. It's just cool to step into another world that is not one that I see in the suburbs of upstate New York. It's not often represented in movies, and we actually talk about it a little bit in the interview, but it's something that stuck out to me watching the movie before I got to talk to the guys as well, that, well, first off, it stars a lot of non-actors, which I thought was a cool choice, because they are painting a picture of this nightlife. They are painting a picture of this very real subculture. You know, take the slasher out of it, obviously and ideally. So they wanted to do it right, and they wanted to pay justice to the world of Providence, even if it is, you know, skewed for the movie, which I imagine it was in at least some ways. Just, you know, watch the movie and you'll see. But it was a cool choice that they used non-actors to play the roles to make it more authentic. But what I was saying before that, something that I noticed in the movie and something we also talked about in the interview, is that this is a movie made by people in the LGBTQ community for people in the LGBTQ community, but of course anyone can watch it. I got a lot out of it because everyone is an outsider at one point or another. People on both sides, and it might be a perceived outsider, but it might not be, and that was a really cool theme of the movie that I almost didn't see coming because I was so focused on the larger-than-life subculture. I was focused on the slasher story that's running parallel to it, and they go down these tracks before they butt heads, but woven throughout the whole thing is this idea of, where do I belong? Where does anyone really belong? Does anybody really belong? Am I on the outside? Do I just feel like it? Like, all of these really real, universal feelings for people done in a world that might not be universal for everybody. It might be very niche, but it doesn't feel it. And I know I keep contradicting myself with, it's this, but it's also not that. And that was just a cool aspect of the movie. I even, while watching it, kind of didn't really care about the slasher part. And I don't mean that as on a knock to the movie, because it was a slasher movie. But I was interested in the bartender story. I'm sorry, I forget the character name. I'm terrible with names. I do know that the drag queen, the lead drag queen who's also in this, name is Gloria Hole, which is a amazing character name and absolutely hilarious. And they pay homage. Her kind of protege in the movie was a drag queen named Kitty Litter, which was a real person in Providence who has since, you know, retired and moved south. But I thought all those touches were cool, but they can also have fun with it and kind of play it up. And another interesting aspect of it was Hollywood, you know, talking about bigger budget movies, because we have more universal access to those, is doing their best for representation, and I guess I should probably put their best in quotes, because sometimes it's representation for the sake of representation, or sometimes it's what they're doing properly, where they're giving lesser heard voices a chance to be heard if there's an interesting story to be told. I would think that Death Drop Gorgeous definitely qualifies as an interesting story to be told, and there's probably a whole lot more story to mine out of that. But what I liked about it being a cast, I want to say exclusively, maybe not exclusively, of LGBTQ, people are just people. If you watch a movie that's mostly mid-20s, you know, straight white people, and maybe they have a couple minority friends, and then there's the one gay character. It always feels like it's a caricature. And I'm saying always as a general term. I don't want to hear a million things. Well, what about this movie or this TV show? Yes, some people are doing it right, of course. But what I liked about in this case is there wasn't really the caricature. It was just people being people. Some of them were kind of douchebags. Some of them were great people. Some of them were lost. Some of them did do the more stereotypical thing, but maybe that's just who they were. I thought that was really interesting, and for anyone listening who is a member of that community, I apologize if I sound really ignorant. That is not my intention. It is just a new world to me. So as I was saying with Death Drop Gorgeous, is it does explore the interesting subculture. It does explore the slasher thing. The slasher aspects of it all reminded me of, and I've used this example before in the past, getting together with my friends at that late high school years, maybe early 20s. You're staying up late, you're looking for something to put on, and you're watching trauma movies, something along those lines, where it is low budget, but it doesn't matter. It's hilarious. Maybe it's not the best acting you've ever seen, but the story's there. You do care about a character or two. The gore is, maybe you don't think it's really happening, but it's effective enough that you feel it. There's one scene in particular that if you're a guy watching this, you will feel it. I don't want to say any more than that, so it takes you by surprise like it took me, because it took me by surprise. It has that level of fun to it. It also kind of pays homage to the 80s, which, from my understanding, was very intentional, that vibe kind of runs all throughout the world, the subculture, even if it's not set in the 80s. It was set in modern times. There is a lot going on, and it was very interesting, and I will admit that the slasher parts didn't keep me fully engaged. In a lot of ways, I almost felt like it was getting in the way of the story, even though that was the story. It's not quite a whodunit. You might kind of make your guess as to who did it or who didn't do it by the end of the movie, but it's not a mystery. You're not Sherlock Holmes. You're not really supposed to be figuring it out. You're just kind of along for the ride. Now, it's a very unique movie, something else we talk about in the interview, where this might not be a mass appeal movie, but for people who are looking for something different, this is that thing. It does a lot of things great. It does a lot of things right. It shines a light on a lesser seen subculture that is pretty prevalent in our, or maybe not prevalent, but it's pretty popular in our country. It is a thing. Outside of RuPaul's Drag Race, I can't think of a mainstream media thing that's constantly shining a light on the world of drag queens, as an example. So this movie is unique. It does do a thing. It might not be for you, but I definitely recommend checking it out, because it's not just about that. It has so many pieces. I mentioned the universal appeal already. I don't need to go down that hole again. But I feel like I just keep repeating myself, so I will just reiterate. Death Drop Gorgeous is available now. Limited theatrical run, VOD, all the major platforms. You can find it. Check it out. Also, make sure you listen to So Wizard Podcast every single week wherever you get your podcasts. So Wizard Podcast can also be found on Patreon, where for as little as $1 a month you get multiple monthly bonus shows. SoWizardPodcast.com is your resource for reviews, recommendations, merchandise, videos, and more. We love hearing feedback, so drop us a note in the comments, leave us something on social media. All of our accounts can be found after the show and in the show notes. And on a more personal note, a good friend and I have an ongoing comedy comic series out right now. It's called Social Studies. It's a slice of life comedy comic. We write it like a sitcom, jam it through the prism of the 90s cartoons that we grew up on. The whole first chapter's wrapped up. We have an Indiegogo going on for that right now. It's a great time to jump on board before chapter 2 comes out. We're adding a lot of new perks, and some of those perks are probably going to make their way to the website as merchandise. So tell your friends. It's all very much appreciated. This is as indie gets for comics. We're just a two-man team doing all the work, doing the printing, getting it out there. SocialStudiesComic.com. Thanks.